Welcome to day 2 of the 11th edition of the Sustainable Innovation Forum. I'm Nick Gowing, founder and director of the Thinking the Unthinkable project. All week we're asking, will the decisions we make over the coming weeks and months really realign us to the Paris Agreement and also to the 2030 emission reduction targets? And we have 2 specific horizons ahead of us. The next 12 months as we build to COP26 in Glasgow, and the decisive action and convergence points that must be met over the next decade to get us to 2030, which for many reasons may still be too late. Well, on Monday, we welcomed top contributions from the likes of the United Nations Environment Programme Finance Initiative, from the OECD, from Oliver Wyman, the risk and management consultants, from SAP to discuss a global Green Deal, what it would look like, how big it will be and how it'll be achieved, plus how the green stimulus could close the $2.5 trillion yearly investment gap into sustainable development. Let me give you a couple of my own takeaways from the first day. A real sense of things changing very fast, largely positively. An enormous amount to do as time passes so rapidly and realities are changing so fast. But there is evidence, as highlighted by the OECD, that still there is foot dragging and convenient resistance, but big positives like the SAP accounting software, meaning that sustainability becomes factored into profit and loss accounts, the resilience that there is out there, the redefining of risks, and the dramatic new definition and refinancing and refocusing of finance.
Global warming is an existential threat to humanity. We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. We don't have plenty of time.
Well, let me emphasize that last graphic, what we're covering here. We're here to showcase innovation. We're here to build momentum. We're here to raise ambition. We're here to shape policy. And above all, to enable partnerships so you can meet and get to know others outside in the virtual environment that's been created for this Sustainable Innovation Forum. Today is the second of 5 3-hour days, and you can see the thematic areas we're covering here up on the chart here. We've already been through day 1, underscoring that we've looked at climate policy, finance and decision making. Day 2, that's today, 17th of November, energy transition. That's at the heart of what we're looking at for the next 3 hours. 18th of November, tomorrow, sustainable mobility and the youth agenda. On Thursday, the industry transition, how industry can change, how fast it can do it, whether it has the means to do it. And finally, on Friday, land use and agriculture. And we will have a contribution from His Royal Highness Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, who feels absolutely passionately about this issue. This is today then about the energy transition. the future of the energy landscape, opportunities and challenges, the importance of a just transition on energy, scaling investment in hydrogen, so little known about it at the moment still, and why energy efficiency must become a key part of the recovery. What's on the agenda for the next 3 hours? First, we have a message from Smart Energy, one of today's industry partners. That'll be followed by a virtual panel. What next for the clean energy transition? We'll be joined by the German Secretary for Energy, the State Secretary for Energy, plus the former COP26 President, Claire O'Neill. We'll have a live interview as well with Smart Energy and the European Investment Bank, investing in the future, how to bank on hydrogen and all the energy options we're looking at. Then we'll have a break for 30 minutes and climate leaders will join us live from the 3% Club. Energy efficiency, the title there. Should it be the route to recovery and the NDCs? How is that achievable? And the final panel here on day 2, can the energy sector really lead by example? If so, how? We'll be wanting to hear from you on all those issues. I'll give you the details of how to do that shortly. But first, a message from the former Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, who's president of the Asia Society Policy Institute in New York.
It's a great pleasure to be with you today. We may not be in Glasgow, but the need for climate action is just as urgent. Amidst what has quickly become the greatest economic and social crisis of our generation, that's the COVID crisis, we've continued to see a rolling apocalypse of climate-related disasters this year. In my own country, Australia, the year began with the Great Australian Inferno. Those fires burned 186,000 square kilometres. That's an area almost the size of the United Kingdom. It claimed many lives and wiped out more than 3 billion animals. We should not be under any false assumptions as to what impact COVID-19 has had on the climate since then. Despite a momentary dip in emissions as countries began shutting down their economies, as of today, we are actually far more likely to emerge from this crisis in a worse position to tackle the climate crisis than we entered it. That's because too many countries, including my own, have used it as an excuse to delay climate action, rather than to accelerate climate action. The only way we can stop this is if more governments use this crisis as an opportunity to build back better, including through a green economic recovery. While we have seen encouraging leadership from Europe, this is yet to be reflected elsewhere, including in Asia. At its heart, a green economic recovery is a plan for jobs. As the International Energy Agency and the International Monetary Fund have told us, $1 trillion global investment annually over the next 3 years would protect or create 9 million jobs and spur more than 1% in global economic growth. I know from my own experience as Prime Minister of Australia during the global financial crisis that investing in renewable energy and energy efficiency during an economic crisis really pays off. It certainly did for us. During the 2008-09 financial crisis, my government supported the installation of insulation in 1.2 million homes, or around 20% of our total national housing stock. We also put solar panels on the roofs of around 76,000 homes. This scheme alone produced savings of roughly 19.5 million tonnes of CO2. The experience in the United States during the last financial crisis was similar. The 2009 American Recovery Act created 1 million new clean energy jobs through until 2015. Therefore, from my own perspective, the best things governments can do in the face of the current crisis is to, number one, invest massively in renewable energy and R&D. You know, it's not all that hard. Number two, accelerate the deployment of large-scale energy infrastructure. And number three, bring forward the decommissioning of carbon-intensive infrastructure. The other crucial thing governments must do in response to this crisis is to honour the commitments they signed up to in the Paris Agreement now 5 years ago. First, they must enhance their own commitments to reduce emissions by 2030. As the IPCC has told us, global emissions must halve between 2018 and 2030. Against this backdrop, and the IPCC's special report on 1.5 degrees, there is no excuse for any government to not do more. But beyond the moral argument, because it remains the greatest moral challenge of our age, that is acting on climate change, the hard truth is that the cost of renewables, including solar, wind, have plummeted since many countries put their original commitments in place. And technologies such as batteries and green hydrogen are now able to be deployed at scale. This has been a big change over the last decade, including the last 5 years. The second thing governments must do is outline their own pathway to reach net zero emissions. With President Xi Jinping's announcement in his September address to the United Nations General Assembly, 43% of the world's emissions are now from countries that have committed to net zero. The fact that the global economy will become a net zero global economy is now assured. It is just a question as to how fast we can get there, and which economies are late getting off the start. The smart thing to do is to act early. Friends, in just a few weeks' time, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the United Kingdom will bring countries together virtually to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of the Paris Agreement. Whether governments now live up to that promise and live up to it meaningfully, not just rhetorically or politically, that's the key question. You see, ultimately the planet doesn't lie. Whatever politicians may say, the planet doesn't lie. This crisis can no longer be an excuse. If anything, it's a massive opportunity for us all. The question is merely one of whether the governments of the world will now seize it with both hands. Technology has delivered us that possibility. Paris, and the framework it has set for all countries in the world, has delivered us that possibility. All governments in the world signed up to Paris. Now it's simply a question, but a hard question, of political will to deliver. And thank you for your attention.
Let me underscore that message from Kevin Rudd there. The rolling apocalypse of climate disasters, as he put it, more likely to emerge from COVID-19 in a worse position to tackle the climate emergency because so many governments have used COVID-19 as an excuse for delay. That from Kevin Rudd. The planet doesn't lie, he underscored.